I got nothing else to do. We're going to talk about stress today. I haven't even looked at this chapter. Normally I do. I'll get here up like half an hour early and look over my notes. But I didn't do that this morning because of the snow, just like everybody else. This is the famous Hans Selye. In 1934, he discovered that when under stress, most animals will react in a similar manner. Now the weird part was that this guy was working with rats, and he was working with all kinds of interesting animals. He wasn't working with humans at all. He's not a human psychologist. He was an animal psychologist. But he realized this, and he was the first one to write the whole thing up, and he hadn't even looked at humans yet. But then most people realized, well, if that's happening with animals, it's actually happening with humans as well. He referred to this as the stress response. The body has a remarkably similar response to many different stressors. Stressors can sometimes make you sick. So my assumption is that anytime I come close to getting sick, it's because of stress. Something's going on, and I need to reduce my stress. I was talking to a guy who was one of my former students. He just had a herpes outbreak, which is not the most pleasant thing in the world. You get blisters all over your lips, your lip splits, starts bleeding. As unattractive as that is, well, he's not from the United States. He's from Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh, people don't have herpes, or I don't know. Maybe he's not stressed out in Bangladesh. Well, that's not true. I saw him. I Skyped with him a couple times when he was in Bangladesh, and he had problems with herpes. He was having problems with it. Well, he's having problems right now with herpes. So he sends me all these pictures of his herpes outbreak. It's not the most pleasant.
Send you pictures.
He sends me
Did I get that
pictures,
right?
yeah, well, he thinks I'm a doctor. Well, I am a doctor, what am I talking about? He thinks I'm a medical doctor and I can fix anything. The reality is, when I was working in medicine, I saw a lot of stuff. So I know a lot of ways to fix things. They gave him a antiviral medication that works, acyclovir. And he said it worked right away, but then it came back a couple weeks later. What is it? Oh my God, do I have some kind of a horrible American disease? And I told him, nope, you just have another outbreak of herpes. Why do you have another outbreak of herpes? Because you're under stress. He's under a lot of stress. He's at a school that he doesn't like, and he wants to move. He wants to go to another school, but he hasn't found another school that will accept him. Remember, he's from Bangladesh, and if you're from a foreign country, the only reason you can stay in the country, in the United States, is if you have a student visa, and he's got a student visa right now for where he is. But if he leaves school, he doesn't have the visa anymore, and he has to go back to Bangladesh. A stressor is any event or situation that triggers coping adjustments to an individual. Stress is a process by which we perceive and respond to events that are perceived as harmful, threatening, or challenging. Before an event stresses us, we must read the event as threatening or even beyond our coping ability. Thus, a stressful event isn't as much the event itself, but how we read the event. Really? So we can talk ourselves into being able to handle anything? Really? Can we do that? Or can we talk ourselves out of doing anything? Yeah, we can do all that. All of this takes thought. All of this takes our own feelings. It all takes self-assurance. A stressor for one person may be a piece of cake for someone else. So what I would tell you to do at this point in your life is to make everything a piece of cake. I can handle that. I can do that. That's what I'm doing right now. This is not easy for me. I was thinking about that this week. I go down to Bash's and people run into me with their carts. I go to Gallup and boy, I'll tell you, that's a mess. And people, they'll cut across lanes and they'll run into you. Walmart's horrible. Walmart's horrible every place, but it's the worst in Gallup. It's the worst place I've ever been as far as Walmart is concerned. This is tough. This is tough. I'm all by myself. My wife's in Iowa with my grandson, who's just the most fun guy in the whole wide world. He's so much fun. And here I am, I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you up here. I have the two damn dogs. I have all the bad animals. The two dogs are the bad dogs, and the one cat I have is the worst cat in the world. She kills all the mice. I think she's killed all the mice probably in the whole Hogan area. She's a monster. But she hates me. If I try to pet her, she bites me. Which is and she lays down on my stuff. She was on my computer the other day. She was typing. She was eating all kinds of strange things. She erased like half my computer, and she wouldn't get off because if I tried to move her, she was attacking me. This is rough. I'm without my spouse, and that's not easy. Short-lived events or events perceived as challenging can have a positive effect on us, like mobilizing our immune system to fight off infection and to promote healing. And of course, we can do that. We can fight off these things. But think about the last time you were sick. Maybe you had a cold, maybe you had herpes, maybe you had, what else is out there? Diarrhea or some kind of digestive problem. Why in the world did that happen? I mean, this bacteria, this virus is around you all the time. Why did it affect you that time? Was it because something negative had happened to you? Is that what happened? I got a call this weekend, a guy that communicates with me all the time. His brother died. And of course, he's got a cold. Now he's got this horrible, horrible cold. Well, normally he doesn't have a cold. But now that his brother died, and he's got to do all that funeral stuff, now he's got a cold. Was it the stress of his brother dying that gave him the cold?
The immune system.
His immune system got weak. He was immunocompromised, and so now he's got a cold. My sister, I keep telling you guys this story. My sister found out that her husband was felt like a woman on the inside. And he came up to her one day and he said, "Can we be sisters?" You know, one of those kind of deals. You can imagine how stressful that is for somebody, especially my sister. This is way back in the 70s, you know, before transgender was anything, before anybody even heard of the word transgender. No, I'm sorry, it was in the 90s. And it upset her a great deal. And the next thing we know, she's got cardiomyopathy, which is an enlarged heart. And then we discovered that, and then they went in, why did they go in? Oh, they gave her a hysterectomy. They went in and gave her a hysterectomy. Is that right? No, that's not right. She had an abdominal mass, and they went in to take out the abdominal mass, and they found out she had metastasized cancer. So why did all this stuff take place? My sister, who wasn't really all that healthy anyway, but at least she didn't have cancer, at least she didn't have heart problems. All of a sudden she finds out that her husband wants to be called Vivian instead of Bob. And all of a sudden she comes down with all these problems. Why? Why did that happen? Could it be that finding out that the love of your life is actually a woman, or it's not, doesn't want to be a boy anymore? Is that what caused her to have cancer and to have cardiomyopathy? And the answer is probably yes. The strange part was that they did a surgery on her abdominal mass. They took it out. They didn't catch it. It was metastasized, so it was all over the body. But her cardiomyopathy went away. I don't know, this isn't right. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Of course, the cardiologists are going, "We don't understand why you don't have cardiomyopathy anymore." And of course, they're not psychologists, they're cardiologists, and they can only see the heart, they can't see anything else. And so the reality was, and of course everybody I knew because she was my sister, I knew that that's exactly what had happened. Her cardiomyopathy went away because she'd had that mass taken out of her gut. Eventually she died of cancer, but she fought it for about 5 years. And when they took out the mass, they said that she probably had 6 months, maybe a year. She lived for 5 years with that, with the whole mess. Eventually, of course, it caught up with her. But finding out that her husband wanted to be Vivian killed her. It was so stressful for her that she had she was immunocompromised, and because she was so weak, because she wasn't an exerciser, she wasn't a physically fit individual. Because of that, all of these things happened, and eventually she died. And she died at 59. My family, nobody in my family dies at 59 unless they drink or unless they do something stupid. We all live into our 90s, and of course I've got all the rest of my brothers and sisters are in their 70s, no problem, no sweat. We're all healthy as horses. Almost, kind of, just about. So it's stress. It has to do with stress. She died because of stress. In the 1950s, Holmes and Rahe put together a list of significant life events by interviewing 5,000 people. They assigned each life event life change units to demonstrate how much disruption or change took place with the event. Lots of things can change you. Lots of things can affect you. But some things that affect you may not affect me because I'm different. Holmes and Rahe constructed the Social Readjustment Rating Scale, a measurement that attempts to quantify life events in terms of life change units. The SRRS was the first systematic effort to link stress and illness. Now remember, before this, doctors didn't even care. They didn't even think about it. They didn't even register with them. So this is the 1950s. We're into the 1950s now. Saley comes up with the fact that stress affects people. That was in the 1930s. And now in the 1950s, we've got Holmes and Rahe coming up with the SRRS. The authors would add up the LCUs accumulated from life events and predict whether the individual was prone to a disease process in the coming months. So we would add up what's going on with you. All of you are taking classes and it's very stressful and you've got all this shit to do, right? Luckily, you may be taking my class where I don't have any time limits on anything at all. And so that's a little bit easier taking my classes than it is taking Dr. Ami's class or Dr. Wolf's class, or maybe even Sarah's. I don't know how Sarah does things. So it may be a little bit easier. Well, there's a reason why I'm so flexible. And the reason I'm so flexible is to reduce your stress. It seems to me that if everything is done on looking at a calendar or looking at a clock, that's a white way of doing things, isn't it? Isn't that the way white people are? They do everything by the clock. You're late. Should have been here at 8 o'clock. And you were 20 seconds late. What the hell's going on with you? That seems like a real white way to do things to me. Anyway, and I don't want to stress you guys out. So I am as flexible as I possibly can be. Now the reality is, I just told you how tough it is to live here. My wife's in Iowa, my grandson's in Iowa. All the fun stuff is in Iowa. I get the bad dogs, I get the bad cat to live with. Oh my God, what a horrible life I'm living. This is terrible. But I don't seem to be that upset, do I? Am I okay? I seem to be okay. I never get sick. I should be sick like all the time, shouldn't I? This should be very stressful for me, shouldn't it? Do you guys live without your significant other? No, you couldn't, could you? However, now you have to remember, we were military, and in the military, you never know. You never know. Sometimes you get an assignment, and they get an assignment, you know, halfway around the world. That happened to us. She was, where were we? Where were we? She got an assignment to Korea. We were in Oklahoma. We were at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. And I was teaching, this is my first teaching, I was teaching for Langston University. I was teaching, and she got an assignment to Kunsan in Korea. Well, Kunsan's an isolated tour because theoretically North Koreans and South Koreans are still at war. So it's an isolated tour, and I couldn't go with her. So she left for a year. That was tough. That was really tough. That hurt a lot. I didn't get sick, but I was working. I was working I was a nurse and a laboratory technician. I was working in a rural health clinic. And of course I was having a great time, you know. I just loved that kind of stuff. So it wasn't that bad. I never got sick. That wasn't the problem, but we had to separate. We were separated. Even when we were in Germany, we were there for 3 years. I was at one base, she was in another base. So we met halfway in between. Came back to the States. We were at Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue, Nebraska, which is right on the Missouri River. And they sent her to Indiana, so we used to meet halfway in between. As romantic as that is. We'd have a romantic weekend in Davenport, Iowa. Write that down, Davenport, Iowa. The most romantic place in the world. Guess where we live today? Right outside of Davenport, Iowa. As funny as that is. Anyway, we're used to being separated. So this isn't as hard for me as it would be for somebody who had never been separated from their spouse. Not only that, but I can wash my own clothes. I can wash my own dishes. I can cook my own damn food. My wife came in to visit a couple weeks ago, and I cooked all the food. You know, I was hoping she'd cook something, but she never did. I don't know. That's okay.
Could I add something?
Sure.
My sister, she had like a really stressful, her last pregnancy was really stressful. And they found little cancers.
Oh, good.
They were waiting for the baby to, after the baby, and do chemotherapy.
Sure.
And for some medical reason, like everything, all the cancer, all the spots and everything, flushed out with the placenta. And it was home free.
There you go. There you go. Stressful situation. Once that stressful situation was gone, her immune system took care of all that stuff. So congratulations to you.
She's I think she's one of the violinists, the one that was born. She's one of the violinists in Queens. She should be graduating soon, like 2 years.
How old
Maybe
is
next
she?
year. She's
16?
16.
Just had a baby?
No, this is the baby.
Oh, okay. Oh,
The baby
okay.
that 16 years ago.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. The baby is 16 now. Okay. Research conducted on a naval crew found that the sailors with high LCUs were more prone to illness during their voyage than those with low LCUs. If you know anything about the Navy, they go out for 5 or 6 months. Sometimes they'll go out for a year. And some people, it's not so bad. Other individuals, they really suffer. So they get out of the Navy after the tour is over with. If they have somebody waiting for them at home, it tends to be a lot harder for these select individuals. It really all depends on the individual and how long they've been in the Navy. But with the SRRS and other similar instruments, they did have critics. Many of the items are vague and open to subjective interpretation. If you revise your personal habits, that's very stressful. Really, what does that mean? Assigning numbers to select events Doesn't take into account individual differences in event appraisal, the example I just gave. Here I am separated from my wife. This should be highly stressful for both of us, and the reality is she seems to be doing okay and I seem to be doing okay. But if it's somebody that's never been separated from their spouse before, this kind of a situation would be highly stressful, extremely stressful. The life event scale tend to lump all events together, whether positive or negative, and sometimes events will balance themselves, creating far less stress than predicted. So some things may be positive to you, and of course they're highly stressful, but it's a positive event. So the fact that it's a positive event should balance the negativity of the stress. Unexpected or uncontrollable events are much more stressful than planned events, like a wedding. Weddings are highly stressful. However, if it were something that you never know is going to happen, like this guy's brother dying, he had no control over it. It was unexpected, and now he's got a cold. And of course, the problem is that he also has asthma, and this could turn into pneumonia. And that's what I warned him about, that he needs to. So how do you know if you've got pneumonia? Well, what do you do? Well, what you do is you look at your mucus to see what color it is. You want your mucus to always be clear. As long as it's clear, then it's normal mucus without any infection. But if it gets pus in it, if you can taste it, suddenly you can taste it, now potentially you've got pneumonia. If it turns colors, the darker it is, the more likely that it's pneumonia. If it turns white and it's thick, now we got a problem. If it turns yellow, we got more of a problem. If it turns green, we got a big problem. You've got some infection going on in there. So you need to I know, this is terrible. You have to look at your own damn mucus. This is horrible. Anyway, that's what you need to do in order to determine if you're sick or not. Many inventories do not differentiate between resolved and unresolved events. Your car breaks down, you call the tow truck comes and picks it up, and it's going to be fixed in a week. Well, that's a resolved problem. You do something in order to be able to survive. Rearrange your schedule so that your other car is good enough, or whatever. What happened to my wife? My wife, her car broke down last year. She started driving the truck, which she doesn't like to do, but it's stick shift. Poor thing. And it doesn't go anywhere in the wintertime. Anyway, she started driving the truck. She was fine. Life event scales tend to underestimate the stress on minorities because of their status, and the reality is you guys do have a lot of stress. As long as you're here on the reservation, you're probably okay. You're around a lot of other individuals who are just like you, but you go off the reservation, the stress increases because now all of a sudden you're a minority. You can imagine how difficult it is for me. I am a minority here, and I volunteered. I'm volunteer to be here. I want to be here, even though I'm a minority, and it's not easy being a minority here. At one point, you may or may not have heard of the Faculty Association. At one point, the Faculty Association almost split because the person that was in charge kept having meetings with just the native faculty members. And they didn't invite the Belladonna. Oh, that was a little interesting. That's the last time I had anything to do with the Faculty Association. That's just not right. We may be different, but we ain't it's so different that you should meet without us. My God. Do we have that many strange ideas? Yes, the answer is yes. Anyway, researchers looking at the nuclear power plant meltdown of 3 Mile Island in 1979 discovered that residents in the area suffered for more than a year with chronically excessively high blood pressure, cortisol levels, epinephrine levels, and norepinephrine levels. And these all have to do with stress. Blood pressure, cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. despite the fact that none of you were alive when 3 Mile Island went down. Wasn't as bad as Chernobyl, but it was still a nuclear power plant that potentially was contaminating the environment. And of course, that was everybody's worry. After the 9/11/2001 terrorist attack on the Pentagon, mental surveys identified 40% of the Pentagon staff were at high risk for PTSD, panic attacks, depression, generalized anxiety, and alcohol abuse. At the Pentagon. Well, that's kind of interesting. Now, come on, these guys are military people. Potentially they've been in combat before. Why in the world are they reacting so negatively to a terrorist attack? I was in a terrorist attack when I was stationed in Germany. They blew up USAFE headquarters. The communists, those damn commie bastards, blew up USAFE headquarters. Sons of bitches, what the hell do they think they're doing? That wasn't the worst part. It wasn't the fact that the terrorists blew up USAFE headquarters. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was they almost decided to send our families back home. This was in 1981. And they were going to send our families back home. Well, that would have been tough for me because my wife and I were both in Germany, and we would have had to send the kids back to the States. Now, the strange part was we would have had to have sent them back unaccompanied. So somebody else would have had to have taken them back. And my parents would have had to come and pick up the kids at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. I know, that seems to be the worst part. Now, why in the world did all these people have such a negative reaction to this? Come on, people are in combat all the time. People are on isolated tours. Why in the world would somebody in Washington, D.C. have such a negative reaction?
It's done in their territories.
Washington, D.C.
It's their home state.
You're absolutely correct. The whole problem was that these people thought that they were invulnerable at the Pentagon. It's right in the, well, it's not in the middle of the country, but it's supposed to be the most protected place in the whole wide world, Washington, D.C. The reality was that this airplane just kind of flew in and crashed into the Pentagon building. That's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the military tends to have two different types of people. They have people that are out in the field, and they have people that are in headquarters. And headquarters people are never attacked, okay? They're supposed to be protected. And the people out in the field are the ones that are supposed to be protecting the people in the middle. It's like, you know, well, these guys were in the middle and they weren't supposed to be attacked. Anyway, headquarters pukes they're kind of different. They have different mindsets. They consider themselves better than the other people. That's weird to say. I'm glad they had a 40% increase in all their problems, bastards. Because I was one of the field people. My wife when she was up for head of the Corps. She was up for head of the Corps. She was a medical service corps. She was up for head of the Corps, which would have meant that she would have gotten a star. It was between her and one of the ladies at the headquarters building. I know. But my wife is a person that's out in the world. She's the one. She's out in the facilities. And of course the other lady got it. Even though she'd never been in a hospital in her life, this lady became head of the hospital corps, medical service corps. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. And here's the bizarre part. This was right before 9/11. So this lady who doesn't have anything to do with military facilities, so all of a sudden they have this attack. My wife didn't get her star. The other lady got the star. She's a headquarters person. She's never been in a facility. And then 9/11 happened. And so we started a war in Afghanistan against the Taliban, against the Al-Qaeda. And all of a sudden we got all these wounded guys, all these wounded soldiers that we need to take care of. Well, this lady had never been in a facility before. She didn't know what it looked like. She didn't know what a hospital was all about. And of course, my wife didn't get the star. Didn't get the position. So she had no clue how to take care of all these people. And my wife was already out of the service. Anyway, whoops. So what did she do? What did this lady do? It was a mess. That's one of the reasons why we had so much trouble right at the beginning of the war, right at the beginning of the Middle East conflict, Afghanistan. That's why we had so much trouble taking care of all of these individuals. We had to hire civilians in order to get all this stuff taken care of. Well, we won't go into the rest of it. Anyway. They should have given my wife this stuff. She would have taken care of all that stuff. And all those people would have gotten better medical care because the other lady closed down all these hospitals. As stupid as that sounds. Anyway, it's not important. Statistics also showed that there was a statistically significant increase in blood pressure among 4 large samples of patients hospitalized around the United States for 2 months after the attacks. People were scared. People were scared in Montana. Why in the world would somebody attack Montana? There's only 900,000 people there. It's the 4th largest state in the Union, and there's only 900,000 people that live in the state. If you crashed an airplane, you probably wouldn't hit anybody because there's so much empty area up in Montana. But people in Montana were afraid that they're going to be attacked. Did that make any sense? Hell no. Who wants to attack people in Montana? There's nothing there. Of course, there's something there. There's missile silos there, but we won't go into the missile silos. But people in Montana were scared shitless. They thought they were about ready to be attacked by the Muslims or something, as confusing as that is. They looked at hospitals all around the United States. Washington, D.C., they had higher blood pressure. New York, they had higher blood pressure. Chicago, they had higher blood pressure. Mississippi, who wants to attack anybody in Mississippi? Anyway, they had higher blood pressure as well. There was a significant increase in symptoms of PTSD after the tsunami in Sri Lanka in 2004. And this is what it looks like. These people are still alive in this picture. They weren't alive after the wave hit. And you can see the wave. You can see how tall it was.
Building.
Yeah, exactly. None of these people survived. But they're still alive in this picture, of course. There was a significant increase in the symptoms of PTSD after the levee break in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. People complained about the Bush reaction. President Bush, George W. was the president. They complained about his reaction. Why didn't he react? Why didn't he go to New Orleans? Why didn't he send people to New Orleans to take care of the people in New Orleans? Why? What was going on in New Orleans? Why didn't he take care of those people? He did go down to the Gulf Coast. He went to Biloxi, Mississippi. But he didn't go to New Orleans. What was wrong with the people in New Orleans? What's the difference between people in New Orleans and Biloxi? What is it?
There's more blacks in New Orleans
I know, there are.
and less in Biloxi.
Biloxi's a wealthy white town. So he went to the white people's town and he ignored the black people in New Orleans. A lot of them died. A lot of them died because they weren't taken care of. They sure took care of the people down in Biloxi, though. All those wealthy white people. Is that the way it works in the United States? Let's vote. How many people think that's the way it works in the United States? All the wealthy white people get taken care of, and all the minorities don't get taken care of. Does anybody think that? Am I the only one? 2, I got 3, 3, 4, 4. You don't think that's the way it works?
Shut in. I don't want to say.
Is that the way it works? Is that the way it works? I know, let's give everybody a tax break, and we'll give the wealthiest people the biggest tax break. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Well, it makes sense to somebody. It makes sense to the
Happening now,
Republic.
right?
That's what's
Yeah.
going on right now. During the 2000 Intifada by Palestinians on the Gaza Strip, psychologists noted a sharp increase in anxiety, acute stress disorder, PTSD, depression, panic attacks. If you were a Palestinian and Jewish people are not the same. If you were Palestinian, then the probability that you would be attacked was very, very high. So people were suffering from acute stress disorder. Of course, this was a conflict. This is a conflict between the Israeli soldiers and the citizens of Palestine. And all you had to do was be Palestinian, and you could get shot and killed just for being Palestinian. You could get arrested because you look like the guy that threw a rock. So all of the anxiety, acute stress disorder, PTSD, depression, panic attacks were all very real. Children in the Gaza Strip had a surge in bedwetting. Why would they have a surge of bedwetting? They're okay, and all of a sudden they start wetting the bed. Why would they do that? What does that mean? You're a kid that's never wet the bed, and all of a sudden you start wetting the bed. Why would you do that? Why? Stress? Well, what's happening to you? Why are you doing this? You're under stress. I'm under stress all the time. I can't remember. I don't think I ever wet the bed. I don't remember ever wetting the bed. I didn't wet the bed when people were shooting at me. I didn't wet my pants. Thank God. I don't know how.
Stress.
I don't know how I kept it in. I never peed myself, so I was okay. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you guys anyway. So why would they? Stress doesn't do. It's not that severe, is it? Well, what was going on? These kids were okay. They were in their houses. It was at night. Why did they pee themselves? 11-year-old, 12-year-olds. Why would they do it? They'd never done it before.
Scared.
They were scared. Yeah, they were scared. They were under stress. Sure, that's. So what is happening to them? Why are they doing this? They're regressing. They're going back to an earlier state when they were being protected, being taken care of, and they didn't have to worry about this stuff. So they're going back to an infant state, to a toddler state. That's how you protect yourself. You go back to a different time. So let's say you're a young girl, 12 or 13 years old, and somebody keeps coming into your room and molesting you at night. What's the first thing that happens to you? You want to go back to a time when you are innocent. You want to go back to a time before this happens. You want to go back to a time when you are protected. So you regress in age, and you start doing things like wetting the bed. Does all this make sense? So if you see this in anybody, a lot of times it has to do with some high stress situation that needs to be taken.
That's what I was going to ask about. I had a roommate that was like that. He would wet the bed.
Okay.
This is like in high school.
Okay.
So we shared a room.
It was a male roommate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had small quarters. But he was pretty. I think much pretty people were just like they knew about it, but I think he was probably embarrassed until later
Was there
on.
anything happening in his life that could have caused him to need to regress?
He fell from probably like a maybe 4-story building.
Oh,
It was
no.
probably he had like a jaw dislocation. I don't know, he was telling me it was probably that one. He fell like head first into like a box of nails.
Oh, my
So he had all
God.
these nails sticking out from his chin.
I fell 30 feet and, oh, God.
They were-
It almost killed me.
They were building a barn,
Gee,
and
Christmas.
and he was probably like about 10, maybe 15 years old.
Oh, Jiminy Christmas.
But that he was saying that it's probably that's he had it like I say like maybe once or twice a week.
Nobody was messing with him then?
No.
Okay.
It's he had like a mattress that was like a
Rubber.
yeah.
Yeah, so that it wouldn't soak into the mattress. So they were bedwetting, they had nightmares, of course they had behavioral disorders. They were going back to an earlier state is what they were doing. And that they hoped that would protect them. In your case, in your friend's case, it probably had something to do with brain damage. Yeah. MRIs taken of Japanese university students before and after the 2011 earthquake showed that those who experienced the most symptoms of PTSD, intrusive memories, and heightened startle response had decreased brain volume in the region of the anterior cingulate cortex. And this is what it looks like. Can you see how high this wave is? Yeah, this is the one that knocked out the power plant, the nuclear power plant. You can see this is the tallest building, and the wave is taller than the tallest building. Killed a lot of people, and you can imagine that's pretty ugly. Tsunami. You guys don't have to worry about tsunamis, okay? You're in the middle of the country. The ocean is never going to wash a wave over you and sweep you out into the middle of nowhere. But if you live on the coast, and over 50% of the population of the United States lives on the coast, this is a real potential threat. When we were living in Japan, we had earthquakes like almost every day. We had one that was an 8.1 on the Richter scale. But it was about 200 miles out, and we thought we were going to get hit with a tsunami. But luckily the wave went the other direction. It didn't come into land. Otherwise, that could have been us. We would have been in the Sawa Air Force Base, and we would have been washed into the mountains. So people were going into the mountains to escape from the possibility of a tsunami. There's your cingulate cortex. Anterior cingulate cortex, that's where it is, right behind your prefrontal cortex. Daily hassles are the small irritations that don't mean much in the main scheme of things, but add up to be the most significant sources of stress. The fact that it's snowing today, you've got to get home. You've got to, maybe there's no food at your house, so you've got to stop someplace and buy food. Well, the only place between here and there are gas stations. Between your house and here are gas stations. So what are you going to buy for supper tonight? Right? At the gas station. Is there any good food at the gas station? Are there bananas? Don't they have bananas and oranges? That's not supper. What are you going to do for supper?
Fried ice cream.
Fried ice cream? There we go. I couldn't think of anything. They've got cheese there. Actually, they've got cheese and eggs and milk. Okay. No. Daily uplifts are the positive things that happen to us that balance our daily hassles and help us survive from day to day. And of course, positive things happen. Maybe your significant other said something nice to you. I don't have it. Oh, it's in my other pocket. My wife wrote me this really nasty note on a dog tag. So it's not nasty. It's not that nasty. She just talks about my butt, and it's kind of nasty, I guess. You're not supposed to talk about people's butts, are you? I'm quite impressed. She's never talked about my body parts before, so this is kind of exciting for me. But this is a positive. I can read this thing and maybe feel a little bit better about myself. I didn't even think that she knew what my name was. She doesn't call me my name. I won't tell you what she calls me, but it's nothing nice. Hassles have proven to be better predictors of health problems than major life events or the frequency of daily uplifts. I mean, crap happens, maybe you didn't get a paper done in time, you know, and Christine's all upset about it, she's gonna give you an F. Get her stuff in on time, just don't even challenge her, you can't. I mean, her world is a box, okay? It's square. And if you don't get things in on time, you don't put everything in that box the right way, there's no leaking over the top. She's not gonna accept it. It's just the way she is. Haven't figured that one out yet. I don't know why she's so inflexible. It doesn't make any sense to me. But just get all of her shit done on time and you'll be okay. That's why I let you guys do stuff whenever. I mean, that's why. She
You should have gave me
worries
this
me.
advice. You should have gave me this advice like 2 semesters ago.
I did.
Just kidding.
Well, I did give you this. I've been talking about this ever since I've been here. Okay, this is sources of stress, common hassles and uplifts. Hassles, concern about your weight. If you think you're a little bit heavy, I weigh myself every morning. That's how much I care about my weight. I weighed 181 this weekend. I was going, what the hell happened? Why did I only weigh 181? I normally weigh 185. I weighed 185 this morning. I peed that night. I mean, I must have gotten up and peed 6 times. I lost all that water. I know, I was so excited. Health of family members, of course. Sometimes you're worried about your family members. My niece just told me that she has autoimmune diseases. She's got a problem with her liver and a problem with her, she has rheumatoid arthritis.
Sucks.
And I told you where she got her rheumatoid. I told you where she got all this stuff. She used to be a meth head. And now she's got all these problems. I feel that sorry for her. Well, maybe not that much. I feel that sorry for her. You do, yeah, I can't see it, yeah. I'm pressing it as hard as I can. Rising prices of common goods, I don't have to worry about this because my wife gives me all the money I want. Okay, she doesn't, but she won't let me give people any money. Home maintenance, maybe you got a problem in your house. Something just happened in my house. It rained the other night. And it was raining in my stovepipe, so water was dripping down the stovepipe. But water accumulated in my bathroom. I got this bubble with water behind, the paint is coming. Do I worry about that? My toilet hasn't worked since I got here. It runs all the time. I fixed it with a pen. Too many things to do, of course, so that we've all got these problems. I've got to type up all the tests for you guys. Kiana was complaining about me not having a test
It was
done.
the second or third chapter.
I did it though, didn't I? I did it this weekend, yeah. As a matter of fact, I typed up all those tests this week. All right, just because you complained about it. Misplacing or losing things, this doesn't happen very often in my house. Yard work or outside home maintenance. I live in where I live in Iowa, I've got a 5-acre house, 5-acre property, about 4 acres is yard, and I have to mow it. I love mowing yards. It's so much fun. Property investment or taxes, I don't worry about that kind of stuff. Crime, do we worry about crime around here? I never lock my car. If you guys need anything out of my car, just
open.
I don't know what. If you need, I don't know, old napkins? Is that what you're after? There's an umbrella in there if you can find it. That's about it. I've got jumper cables in there. I never lock my car. What do I have to lock up? Is there anything that anybody wants? Oh, my pen's with me.
Receipts. Just kidding.
But the lady,
Tires.
the lady that was beside me, she locked her car. And when she saw me get out of my car, she immediately turned around and locked the car like I was about to bust a break in and get all of her CDs. I didn't do that. Is this a dangerous place? Is there a lot of crime around here? Somebody just lost something, didn't they?
There was a manhunt earlier this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was he doing?
I think they carjacked somebody and then there's 3 of them, I think. They had to use like a shutdown Navajo community.
Wow.
I don't know if they apprehended anybody,
Well, they could steal my car. I don't know if you could. It's got a fob. You'd have to steal my fob in order to start the car. Otherwise, it's not going to go anyplace. Your physical appearance, and I've only got one mirror in my house, so I'm pretty lucky I've only got the one damn mirror, so I have no clue what I look like. So if I'm looking older than I did before, you'll understand why. Relating well with your spouse or your lover, it's an uplift. Relating well with friends, completing a task, feeling healthy, getting enough sleep, eating out. Where the hell do you eat out around here? Where do you eat out, Sharon? Damn it. Burger King? Denny's? The gas station? I don't know. The gas station? All their food is like double fat fried and deep fat fried. I don't know what it is. It's pretty nasty stuff. Fried ice cream.
Do you think we're friends?
So you don't have to worry about eating out here.
I know, that's what I thought too. Like, where's that? Gee.
Meeting your responsibilities, visiting, phoning, or writing someone, spending time with your family, home pleasing to you. My home is pleasing to me. I enjoy my Hogan.
Oh, I thought those were hassles. I was like, what?
No, these are uplifts.
Yeah.
Hopefully these are uplifts. Eating out
Well, eating out is also a hassle.
can be.
Yeah.
I always go out on dates with my wife. I talk about all of the honeymoons we've been on. You know, we go on honeymoons like every time we get together, we go out on a honeymoon. Anyway, it's my favorite picture. Everyday hassles or mundane irritants and stressors negatively affect physical and mental health to a degree that exceeds the adverse consequences of major life events. Compounding daily hassles can accumulate to cause worsening symptoms in people already suffering from illnesses like lupus. They can develop autoimmune diseases. Slowly being eaten to death by minnows. That's one of the things they talk about. It's eating the dead skin off this person. And yeah, you go to special spas and they have these minnows that eat your flesh. What they're doing is eating the dead skin off your body. Being slowly eaten to death by minnows. Some researchers have suggested that select individuals may respond more negatively to daily hassles. Those high in anxiety to begin with, those who have trouble letting go to unattainable goals, people who have low social support. These individuals, daily hassles just eat them alive. Type A personalities. Sue keeps coming to my office and trying to get me as irritated about things as she is. I'm not. I'm not a type B personality. I'm a type Z personality, okay? Nothing bothers me. They're ripping you off. The school's doing something to you. Being eaten by a rabbit. This is a good picture. Many researchers have discovered that lacking social support can trigger stress more often than daily hassles. An overly anxious or socially isolated person may overreact to daily hassles in a way that magnifies their impact. Of course, those who do not overreact may be less vulnerable to daily hassles. And of course, that's me. I don't worry about this stuff. I don't worry about money. I never worry about money. I haven't worried about money in a long time. My wife takes care of all that stuff. It's so nice not having to think about this stuff. I don't have any money right now. Well, I got $5. Yep, $5. I got $5. There we go. I tried to give $5. Good thing you didn't take that $5. I was trying to give Travis $5 the other day. And thank goodness you didn't take it. Otherwise, I'd be broke right now. Thank you. I'd have only quarters in my pocket. People disadvantaged by poverty or minority status may experience daily hassles that wealthier people or people who aren't minority don't experience. And of course, that's white-splaining. I was just reading about this weekend. White people trying to explain what racism is, they have no clue. They can't have any clue. They've never experienced it before, so they don't know what it's like. They've never lived on in the middle of a reservation where they're the only white person around. They don't understand what it feels like. They've never been there. They've never lived in a black community. They don't understand what it feels like to be isolated. Now, the one thing that I can do that, when I was a white person living in a black community, this was in Maryland, there was one thing that I could do that they couldn't do. I could leave that area and I was in a dominant position again. I will always be white. So I don't know what it's like being another race. I know what it's like being white on a reservation. Do I feel put upon? Do I feel in danger because I'm white? Some people don't like white people. Like,
I didn't say that.
no, it's your friend. Weren't you sitting beside somebody that thinks we stole over?
Yeah.
Which is kind of right, but yeah. What was I reading about? Oh, yeah. In the 1400s. Evidently, you guys were farther east than this. You were over in Oklahoma area, evidently, in the 1400s. And they called you something else. They didn't call you Dene, they called you something else. That's when the Spanish first got here, okay. You weren't here yet, okay? You weren't in this area yet. You were farther east. Maybe you were here and you were there as well. They didn't talk about that. Anyway, that's what I was reading about this weekend. When the Soviet system collapsed starting in 1989, the daily hassles and chronic stress led to a 4-year period when overreaction skyrocketed in the form of rates of divorce increased in Russia, murder rates increased, suicide rates increased, rates of stress-related diseases increased, male life expectancy dropped by 10 years. Now, why in the world did that happen? The reason is because the Soviets controlled how much alcohol you could buy. So they only let you buy a select amount of alcohol. After the Soviet Union collapsed, you could buy as much vodka as you wanted. Vodka, I don't know if you've ever tasted vodka, it's really strong stuff. It's like poison. This stuff is almost like Everclear. Well, it can be. Their vodka is anyway. Their vodka is really, really strong. The vodka made in the United States and Canada, it's like 40% alcohol, which is pretty strong. Your tequila is about the same. Mezcal is about the same. But vodka in Russia is 50 to 70%. And so it's really, really strong. And they don't flavor it at all. It just tastes like alcohol. Nasty, nasty stuff. Why would somebody drink that? And the answer is that we don't, of course. If we were drinking vodka, we would mix it with something to make it taste better, make it more palatable. However, the Russians, of course, they're under all this stress. So what do you do if you're a Russian and you're under a lot of stress? You drink. You get drunk. You go home and get drunk every night. And since vodka is fairly inexpensive, it's made out of potatoes. Since it's fairly inexpensive, they drank themselves to the point that they lowered their life expectancy by 10 years. Wow, that's a lot. And that's pretty ugly. Chronic noise pollution can lead to stress-related problems. One study from Munich in 1995 showed that children living near airports were found to have higher blood pressure and cortisol and other stress hormone levels than children that didn't live near the airport. Another study by Cohen, Glass, and Singer in 1973 found that children who live in noisy homes have more reading problems than children who live in quieter homes. This is really kind of interesting. My wife, she is the in-home grandma for my grandson's elementary school class. He's in first grade. And so she is one of the people that reads, that the kids read to her. And she knows exactly which kids are reading well and which kids aren't reading well. The kids that are reading well are kids that live in houses and homes where either they have a room to themselves where they can go in and do something without any noise, or they're the kids that there's no noise in the house. There are some people that have to have the television on all the time. All the time. My son did this. That's how he did his homework. He watched television and he did his homework at the same time. There always had to be some other outside noise. If you have to listen to music to do your homework, then potentially you're not really concentrating. Either you're not hearing your music or you're not concentrating on what you're doing. So this is one of the ways that you can tell the difference between individuals that are concentrating and people that aren't. Research by Bronzapt and McCarthy in 1975 found that children with classrooms on the railroad side of the building had lower reading scores than children on the other side of the building. Really? Railroads, huh? Railroads are noisy, and they used to be a lot noisier. When I was in grade school, our grade school was right next to the railroad tracks. Now, why in the world would you build a grade school right next to the railroad tracks? Why did they do that? Well, actually, they didn't have to worry about transportation. This is a farming school, so all the kids came in from the farms anyway. So it didn't have anything really to do with transportation.
So it's not anything like Gallup or Winslow or Flagstaff?
No, it's a different
The railroad
situation.
goes through the town, delivers supplies, drop-offs.
Well, they did deliver supplies, but why in the world would you build a school right next to the railroad?
It probably wasn't a school before, it was probably like a post office.
No, it was a school. They built it as a school, and it was right next to the railroad tracks. Why would they do that? Because the land was cheaper. They found the cheapest land they possibly could, and the closer to the railroad tracks you were, the cheaper the land. So they built it right next to the railroad tracks. Now, when I was in the first grade, the railroad tracks were west, and our classroom was the farthest east. Now, unfortunately, the other first grade class were on the west side. And those were all the dumb kids. I was in the class with the smart kids, and we were on the east side. I don't know if they understood what was going on. Maybe these kids were dumber because they had all that noise to contend with all day long. Maybe that's why they weren't as smart as we were. It didn't seem fair. We were all the bluebirds. I started out as a redbird. They were the yellowbirds. They had 3 reading programs. So if you weren't a very good reader, you were in the yellowbird program. And if you were a mediocre reader, you were in the redbird program. The really good readers were in the bluebird program. I know. Anyway, so I've always been a bluebird. I hope that, well, I was a redbird, then I was a bluebird. So I hope that makes everybody feel better about me. Anyway, because they are young, children are less able to tune out extraneous sounds, thus making chronic noise more disruptive. So if you have children and you live in one of those households where there has to be extraneous noise all the time, then potentially what you need to do is turn off the damn television, or turn off the radio, or turn off the stereo. Some people have to have noise all the time. All the time. My son does that. He'll watch a movie that he's seen 1,000 times and do his math homework. I don't know. I don't even understand the title of his class that he's taking, but he does all this stuff. Analytic mathematics. It's really insane. Noise in itself doesn't have to be stressful depending on the attitude of the individual. In one study in a noisy urban environment, the reaction to the noise determined how strongly the noise was linked to health complaints. People who can control the noise level feel less stress from the noise, and this is one of the reasons why some people will listen to headphones all the time. They can turn it up or down as they care to. As long as you can control the level of noise, you're okay. You feel like you're in control, and the noise doesn't bother you as much. I was living in Los Angeles. What year is this? 1999. I was living in Northridge, California. And we lived right beside a busy street, and I didn't understand what was going on. But we were kind of grouchy with each other, my wife and I. My son was living with us at the time. Things weren't going very well, couldn't figure out what was going on. We moved to, what did we move to? We moved from Northridge to Washington, D.C., and we started living in a residential area, in a black community, but it was a residential area off the main road. We realized that we were sleep deprived. We weren't sleeping very well because there was so much noise from the road. And this took us about 6 months to figure this out. We slept like 10 or 12 hours a night when we got to Washington, D.C. because we had been sleep deprived in California. It was that bad. So if you live in Los Angeles, if you live in any of the surrounding communities, potentially there's so much damn noise, and there's just so much noise that potentially you're sleep deprived, or we were anyway. So when we moved to Montana, we moved way out in the middle of nowhere. It was so dark there that we saw the northern lights almost every night. Almost every night. It was quite exciting. In a study of it's dark up in Canada. We were right on the Canadian border, and it's dark up there. Them Canadians don't turn on their lights. In a study by Calhoun in 1970, the researcher found that rats living in a progressively crowded environment begin to engage in deviant behavior. The males start fighting over territory. The infant mortality rate increased sharply. Any idea why the pups were dying?
Overpopulation.
I mean, if mommy's going to feed you, you're going to be okay, aren't you? So why were the pups dying? Why were the baby rats dying in infancy? Why were they dying in infancy? Moms weren't taking care of them. The more crowded the environment. And we see this in urban environments. Somebody who's a good mother, as long as she's in a fairly good environment, all of a sudden she gets into a bad environment, she stops taking care of her children. She allows her children to go out and do whatever, and then they die. And we see this all the time. So you're lucky that you live in a rural environment. Decline in female sexual receptivity. The females stopped having sex with the males. They didn't want to have pups. They weren't good mothers. The other thing that happened, they started eating each other. Cannibalism. And of course, if you've ever seen Escape from New York or Escape from Los Angeles, those two crazy movies from the 1970s, cannibalism was one of the things that people started doing in negative situations. Population density is a measure of crowding based on the total number of people living in an area of limited size. Crowding is not an inevitable consequence of density, it is a psychological state. What's the most crowded city in the world? Do we know?
Bruce, maybe the comparison on this one with the cannibalism and then the kind of female sexual.
Sure.
And if you fit this one with the Jeffrey Dahmer and the population he was in, it was like right.
Yeah, where's he
there.
living in? Where was he living?
I think it was.
No,
And it was like in a ghetto, kind of like a black like a
But he's living in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee has kind of grown into Chicago. It's that bad. I mean, that whole area has grown up. I don't know. Jeffrey Dahmer. But we had that other guy, John Wayne Gacy. He cannibalized his victims too. He was living in a small town in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. Rats. There may be more cannibals out there than we realize. But I'm not exactly sure. What's the most crowded city in the world? Would we expect, what did we just find out?
Tokyo.
Tokyo or maybe Mexico City? Maybe, I don't know. Tokyo probably. People live right on top of each other. However, you live around another group of indigenous people who have always lived right on top of each other, right? I mean, they used to have pueblos that were 5 stories high. People live really close to each other. The buffalo hunters, they live in towns where the houses are right next to each other. They have no yards. I know, it's terrible. Wouldn't want to live there.
I think in the United States it's Los Angeles.
Probably. Or New York. Actually, it's Manhattan. I think it's Manhattan. I know. Everybody lives in those high-rise apartments. Ugh. And who built all those things? Donald Trump? No. Let's not make him president and make us live on top of each other. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. He's already the president. What am I going to do? I don't know. This is really kind of weird, isn't it? So how in the world, why do the New Yorkers, they're the rudest people in the world. I don't know if you've ever been in New York, but they're not very nice. And they never make eye contact, ever. And you can't say hi to somebody. You know, that's a movie. Crocodile Dundee goes to New York. All of a sudden, everybody starts saying hi. You know, hi to Crocodile Dundee, whatever. Mick is his name. Anyway, but people in Tokyo don't seem to have a problem with it. But people in New York do. People in London do. People in Paris, well, not so bad. It's not so bad. But people in other places do seem to have problems with it. So why, Shanghai, my God. I think Shanghai actually is the most crowded place in the world. But Shanghai, they live in these cement monsters. How can they do that? Why are the Chinese okay with that kind of an environment? Why are the Japanese okay with that kind of an environment? But we just had a shooting over the weekend, didn't we? Where was it? Oh, Aurora, Illinois. The guy got fired and pulled out a pistol and started blowing people away. Shot the person that fired him, shot the HR guy that was with him to make sure everything was going to be all right. Boom, boom. Then he went out and started shooting at anybody he saw. Shooting and killing. He only wounded one person. He killed 5. He only wounded one person. Well, he wounded 5 police officers, but that was later. That was a little bit later when he couldn't get a good shot off. Anyway, so why can't we handle it, and why can they? Why can the people in Shanghai handle it? Sharon, what's going on? What's wrong with those people? What's right with those people? Why can they handle it better than we can? You want to live in an environment like that? They have hotels that are beds, okay? They honeycomb these things. So you climb up to your bed, and it's not a room. You haven't rented a room, you've rented a bed. And it's worse than that because it's a Japanese bed, so it's not very soft. Why can they handle it and we can't? What's wrong with us? Or what's right with them? Or what's wrong with them and right with us?
The collective society.
I wanted Sharon to she knew it was a collectivistic society. Yes, they're trained to live within themselves. So And when they get in a subway and somebody bounces up against them, they don't push back because they're used to it. Remember I told you the story of the Japanese stewardesses? And they just all crowded around me. And they didn't think anything about it. Of course I did, because I'm not used to having people that close to me, except maybe my wife. But here they were just all over me. And I'm from Indiana, I need my space, my God. And here they were just everywhere in my face, rubbing up against me with their body parts. I'm not used to that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen to me very often. There you go. Wolfgang Puck. What the hell are you doing in McDonald's? There we go. Okay. How would you like to walk down that street? Doesn't that look like a good time? Let's go shopping. Then you run into this kind of stuff. My God. Now this is actually China, it's not Japan. Dorm room studies have shown that residents of traditional corridor rooms feel more crowded, less in control, more competitive, and more easily annoyed than those in suite-type room clusters. The environment of poverty refers to the types of things that poor people must often live with. Crowding, too much noise, pollution, of course, because they live in the bad side of town, discrimination, unemployment, crime, and the threat of violence. So it's better to live in a dormitory where it is a suite, so that you feel like you have your own space, instead of having a corridor rooms. And of course, when I was in college, they didn't have suites. They only had, well, they did actually. We had 2 buildings that were all suites. But I lived, of course, I was poor, so I lived in the corridor rooms, where I had no room to myself. I had to share my room with everybody. That's what it looks like in Japan. These are called pushers, and they will push the people in.
They're cramming them in?
They're cramming them in. That's exactly what, how'd you like that? Somebody grabbing hold of whatever and shoving you into it. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He can't get his legs in. This is him right here. Here's his legs. But he can't get his legs in. How would you like that? This is the way it is every day in Japan. I know. And look at these people watching. Well, they don't even care, because they're next.
Yeah.
Wow. This looks like a good time to me. As Americans, we don't go on the subway in Japan. We just can't. For one thing, my wife is, how can I say this? She's a full-bodied lady. Okay, she's got, I know, full body, yeah. So if she were there, the men would just. Japanese women are kind of small-chested. They're not very big. But my wife is full-bodied, so they would just have a real hard time keeping their hands off of her. It would be a mess. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. It's terrible. You can't imagine what it's like. The young ladies well, anyway, we won't go into that. We won't talk about that. Sue will get all upset. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time.